2024 Braves Country Radio broadcast season, along with pitch-by-pitch, play-by-play, the classic call of Braves Country Baseball. We will bring you a live pregame show and postgame show, phone lines, wide open, call, react, answer questions, along with the chat. That's Braves Country today, pregame, Braves Country tonight, postgame. We'll see you in 2020. Hey, this is Braves Country Radio. We're bringing pitch by pitch, play by play, your Atlanta Braves all year long. Please like and subscribe. It's free. It helps us bring you more of the game we all love. Braves Country Radio, your home for the classic ball of Braves Country Baseball.
Here's the news. There's still a need for hundreds of thousands of cybersecurity professionals in the U.S. right now. My computer career is training people to help meet the demand. No IT experience? No problem. Take a free career evaluation today. Start your new life as an IT pro in as little as 4 months. Grants covering up to 53% of the cost are available to those who qualify. It's not rocket science. It's mycomputercareer.edu.
Enjoy Silver Stays, Epic Stays, and plenty of room to roam in Greater Fort Lauderdale. Our hotels, attractions, and restaurants have taken the Visit Lauderdale Safe and Clean pledge, so you can relax and explore with confidence. When you're ready for that well-deserved staycation, our 23 miles of golden beaches await. Find wide open spaces to kayak and paddleboard. Visit your favorite attractions, or al fresco on waterfront patios. Learn more at sunny.org.
Braves Country today. We're talking Southern sports. We go live 3 to 5. Southern Sports Talk with the voice of Braves Country Baseball back in the game. Join every day sports analysts from all over Braves Country talking college football, the NFL, Major League Baseball, what's trending in the world sports. Braves Country today. We go live 3 to 5.
It all starts with just one thing. When recycling, rinse out jars and cans, and avoid recycling wax paper or paper soiled with food. This will reduce recycling contamination. Find tips and more at onethingus.com. What's your one thing?
Hey, Braves Country, this is back with you with Braves Country Radio. We're bringing pitch by pitch, play by play, your Atlanta Braves all year long. Please like and subscribe today. It's free. It helps us bring you more of the game we all love. Braves Country Radio, your home for the classic ball, Braves Country Baseball.
Hey, sports fans, it's Ron Peterson here, host of the Ron Peterson Show, inviting you to join us daily for 2 hours of Atlanta's funnest sports talk. I say fun because it is. You've never heard a show like it because we make the listeners a part of the show. Every day between noon and 2 p.m. Eastern, you're finding the best sports talk, including the latest on the Falcons, the Braves, and more. And who knows, you might even hear you. That's the Ron Peterson Show, daily and noon, right here on WQEE 99.5.
Brand new for the 2024 Braves Country Radio broadcast season, along with pitch by pitch, play by play, the classic ball of Braves Country Baseball. We will bring you a live pregame show and postgame show, phone lines, wide open for you to call, react, or ask your questions along with the chat. That's Braves Country today, pregame, Braves Country tonight, postgame. We'll see you in 2020. Good day, Braves country. How the hell are you? We're going to talk a little bit of everything today. We're going to get into what's going on in the world of Major League Baseball, a lot of movement and shaking that has gone on since the last week that we talked. Teams in our division have made moves, teams in our league that have made moves, and what could be on the horizon. We've got some predictions on where some of these guys are going to go. We're starting to get a little more clarity on what's going on in Major League Baseball as we get, what are we, essentially 5 weeks? Well, just over 4 weeks away from pitchers and catchers reporting. And so with all that being said, there's still a lot of free agents out there. You're starting to see some of them come in, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to get into a lot of things in the rumor mill going around Major League Baseball. But real quick, because we do the daily sports talk show in Atlanta on WQEE, in case you haven't caught us there yet. If you're watching on Braves Country Radio, we come your way here as well. We did want to talk really quick about what's been going on in the world of football for the last 24 to 48 hours. You've got Aaron Rodgers that was kicked off of ESPN. They did it really quietly, and it was good timing. Hell, they probably knew that timing was coming. But they announced that Aaron Rodgers will not be on ESPN Pat McAfee show for the rest of the year. And they're not talking about, see, when I first saw it, I thought they were referring to the football year, meaning until the end of February. They are referring to the rest of 2024 is how it was being said. Now, maybe they go back and backtrack that, but as of this morning, that's how it was laid out, is that it's going to be all the way through 2024, the entire 2024 season. Now, I think that's a plus if you're a Jets fan. You get Aaron Rodgers to start focusing on something more than just himself. You get him focusing on football. But if you are a Pat McAfee fan, you're probably pretty bummed, because that really was the segment that he had the most views with. I don't particularly understand why, because I don't find Aaron Rodgers all that compelling when they interview him. But I do understand that a football crowd wanted to see what he had to say on a number of things. And remember, one of the things that he really went viral with, one of the things that he really got into everybody's limelight, it wasn't really football related. It was the fact that he was, he got busted for lying about or misleading the press on whether or not he had a COVID shot. So there was that going on. And that kind of spiraled into the chat that him and McAfee would have. So regardless, however you cut it, they have kicked him off the show. And we'll see if he comes back next year. But as of right now, when I first saw it, I thought it was referring to end of essentially February. But if you missed that little side note, evidently he's not going to be back for the entire 2024 year. Now, look, once you start getting into training camp and whatnot, that's going to, the fact that he won't have to make the appearances on the McAfee show, the fact that they won't be on the HBO show because you can't be on their back-to-back years. Hard Knocks is what I was referring to. So because of that, you've got to realize that you are across the board in pretty good shape as a Jets fan going forward, because when it's all said and done, the more distractions, I don't see where it enables Aaron Rodgers to go out and play his best football, especially coming off a major injury, especially at that age. So we put that aside, and the first thing we want to react to is the Nick Saban. Nick Saban goes out and he retires. Some folks say out of nowhere. I am really starting to think this whole thing was was a setup. I'm starting to think more and more that's why they put an Alabama football team in the playoffs that didn't deserve the invite. I'm starting to think that we'll see him on TV with ESPN. Now, the reasoning behind him not wanting to coach anymore, I don't think was made up at all. I kind of expected this going forward with a lot of players. A lot of coaches, especially the older coaches, that, let's be honest, who in the hell wants to go through what they have to go through in the college football landscape with just numerous, and I mean numerous, NIL deals that you have to deal with. You're no longer recruiting a kid. If you're Nick Saban and you grew up doing this, remember, he started as an assistant coach way back in the 70s, right? 5 decades ago. He no longer is just going and trying to recruit someone like he did Michigan State or LSU or Alabama when he first got there. And for the majority of the time he was there. He was no longer just trying to get a kid to come to Alabama and then trying to develop him and not worry about if he's getting enough playing time in year 1, year 2. He was more looking at a kid coming there, having a couple of seasons with him, and then by year 3 and year 4, or if he was redshirted, even a year 5, that's when you would go straight into it and say, all right, let's hit the ground running. Let's see what we can do here. But instead what you get is you get a situation where you recruit a kid in, and now that they've opened up, and I know they're eventually going to clean this up, but this new goofy law that they put into effect that overruled, that basically said that these kids can transfer at any time, it is going to absolutely destroy the fabric of college football. And you might see some of your more talented coaches getting the hell out of there and heading to the NFL. I don't believe that's where Saban's going. I believe Saban's hanging them up. 72 years old. He has nothing left to prove. And Nick Saban will have plenty of money. And if he wants to still be involved in the game, anyone would be a fool not to hire him as a television analyst. I believe he's more likely to be a guy that's going to be in studio, so he doesn't have to travel as much. He doesn't have to prepare as much. But you never know. You never know. Nick Saban may decide that he wants to be at the game. I doubt that that's going to be the case. I would say that he'll go in to the studio in some capacity, whether it's with ESPN, which is going to be more likely now that ESPN Disney control the entire SEC landscape. And if you're hiring Nick Saban, you're not hiring him to cover Big Ten football. You're not hiring him to cover the Big 12. It wouldn't make a lot of sense. So most likely, he either ends up at ESPN Disney, or they could possibly put him in a situation where he is doing different kind of content for like a CBS or whatnot that wants eyes on their app. The CBS, what's it called? The HQ app. I could see that as well. But anyways, he's done. And so the biggest question you have, I think most people have, is, well, where does Nick Saban rank all time on the college football scale? And honestly, you can argue this back and forth because it really comes down to how many. What is your criteria? Are you going for national championships? Are you going for winning percentage? Are you going for all-time wins? Do you look at it as someone who built something, or someone who came in and just kept it moving? You look at a guy like Joe Paterno, and I know there's a lot of scandal behind him, and realistically, his 409 wins, they've taken him away and put him back so many times. it's almost laughable at this point. Remember, they vacated about 20 or so wins of Bobby Bowden's record because there was a 2.5, 3 year span where there was an academic scandal, and so they took his wins away. But the wins that they took away from Paterno from being involved in the Sandusky scandal, they eventually put back. I don't think either one of them should have been taken away, honestly. And if that's the case, what you really have is you've got Bobby Bowden had 389 wins on the field. So they ended up taking a total. It looks like what they ended up ending up with before it was more. They ended up with a total of 12. Taking 12 away. So he actually has 389. Paterno, 409, was vacated by about, it was somewhere between 75 and 85. But if you want to go by his real number, it's 409. Bear Bryant, 323. And then you got Nick Saban. He is 15th on the list at 292. Now, in defense of Saban, I would say, hey, the guy in a different era, granted, so a totally different situation, but he is a 7-time national champion. 6 of them with Alabama, 2009, 11, 12, 15, 17, and 20. And then you can put an asterisk on anything that happened in 2020, but regardless, it's a national championship. The question comes into with Nick Saban is where do you rank him? You rank him above Bear Bryant? I would not. Bear Bryant, 323 wins, but more importantly, Bear Bryant helped revive the Alabama brand. Now, he didn't build it. So Alabama was already a football power when he came into the fold in 1958. But he did have 6 national championships in his own right at Alabama. They were much more difficult to win back then. That's one argument. The other argument is they gave out multiple national championships back then. So take that with a grain of salt. Then you go to Joe Paterno. He inherited a football powerhouse when he went to Penn State. But he did accumulate 409 wins. He did have a 749 winning percentage. Bear Bryant, a 780 win percentage. And where is, Saban, 804. So that alone to me, regardless, I think you could go back and forth on who the greatest is. Regardless, Nick Saban is a top 5. He's on your Mount Rushmore of major college football programs. When you start talking about John Gagliardi, which he coached in the Division II, Division III mold of college football, and you talk about Eddie Robinson, same deal. We're not major college football head coaches. Same thing with Kevin Donnelly, who's 5th on the list. Ken Sparks from Carson Newman, all that. I can't put any of those guys there in the modern era because they didn't do it on the biggest stage. So I'm going to do it this very easily. You know where my heart lies. I'm always going to say Bowden was the best, mainly because not only did Bowden end up with 389 wins, which will qualify him if you don't take away Paterno's wins like they originally did, whatever. It would qualify him bare minimum for 2nd all time for major college football. He won 2 national championships in the major polls. He also won 4 other national championships in the computer polls. But the other big reason why I will always side with Bobby Bowden is not only did Bobby Bowden do it with class, Bobby Bowden built his brand. Bobby Bowden did not inherit anything. But regardless, you want to put anyone in front of him, I don't care. That's not the argument. The argument is who's the 4 best. And to me, if I'm putting them out Rushmore in college football, Saban is on there, Bear Bryant is on there, Bobby Bowden is on there. By the way, all have all have links to Bear Bryant, obviously, in the Alabama tree. And Joe Paterno I would have to put Paterno number 4, regardless of what he was accused of. That's not really on the field stuff, and it's also not something that they've ever linked to the fact that he was actually doing anything. He just turned a blind eye. If you ask me to put a number to take him off because of it, and you say, well, who's your other? That one would get tricky, because if you're talking about all time, you got to talk about Pop Warner, 319 wins, and he was the grandfather of college football. He coached at Georgia. He coached at Pittsburgh, Iowa State, Stanford, Temple. He was all over the place, but he helped build college football. Same thing with Amos Alonzo Stagg. He was one of the very first pioneers. Same thing with Newt Rockne, if we go far enough back. We're going all time. I'm probably taking off Paterno, putting Newt Rockne on there. But if you're talking about recent, it would probably be in the ilk of either Woody Hayes, but of course he had his scandal. Maybe Lou Holtz didn't do it long enough, but he was a hell of a coach. Steve Spurrier's in the conversation. He just didn't do it quite long enough. So there you have that. All right, let's go ahead and get into the baseball, as we've got a lot to get into this on what's going on. Now, you've had a few moves, and realistically, the moves that have come across here in the recent days, I think the biggest one that jumps out at me was the one of the Chicago Cubs, and I know I'm going to butcher the hell out of this guy's name, but the Chicago Cubs go out and they get their left-hander from the Japanese league. And it's a 4-year deal, by the way. I just saw the actual numbers today. I didn't know what it was, because there was a lot of arguments back and forth on whether or not. But Imanaga is his last name, and it's a 4-year, $80 million deal. What they have not, and there is an option for a 5th year, what they have not, he's 30 years old. He's a lefty. What they have not mentioned is what the posting fee is, and that goes against your salary cap as well. Let me see here. They've just updated it. It says the posting fee is about $10 million. So there you have that, $10 million on that. I don't think the Cubs are done, to be perfectly honest with you. I believe the Cubs are going to go out there, and they still got to get a bat. Remember, they lost Cody Bellinger, and Cody Bellinger has got to be brought back, or they've got to find someone to equate something close to what Bellinger can do. And you look at some of the big ones that are still available. We're going to hit that list real quick. And the guys that are still out there, I saw one thing battered around this morning. They were talking about whether or not you would go out there and sign a Marcus Stroman if you were the New York Yankees. That may be the worst idea I've ever heard in my life. For people who don't remember this, a few years ago while he was on a Cub contract, Marcus Stroman was bashing the hell out of the Yankees and Brian Cashman on social media. So I don't think there's any way that happens. He ended up scrubbing those tweets later on. But he did. He bashed the hell out of the Yankees. He bashed the hell out of Brian Cashman, the entire front office. Take that off the table. Marcus Stroman's not going there. Marcus Stroman, also take this off the table, Rays fans. We're done with the big acquisitions unless it's via trade and we get rid of some cash. Because right now, if you're looking at the bare bones of where we are in the Atlanta Braves here in second week of January, the Braves luxury tax payroll is being estimated at about $271 million. There's been two spots that are saying it's just over 270. A couple that are saying it's just over 271. But for argument's sake, we're just going to say 271. Okay. The threshold right now is at 277 for the third threshold. And if you crash through that third threshold, so essentially we're about $6 million away. And they've already gotten the arbitration deals done for Freed and for AJ Minter. But the point is this. All the other numbers are just being guesstimated at this point. If you crash through that next threshold, the third threshold, there's two things that happens. The third threshold would move the Braves' top draft pick back 10 spots. GMs hate that idea. The other thing is, and this is what the owners hate more than anything, they're going to have to pay a bigger tax. So your 277 goes crashing through the roof, and you would essentially end up, the early projections that I saw was in the low 300s. That's not happening. There's a reason why the Braves did what they did, why they weren't out. Remember a few shows back, this was in early December, essentially. It was right around the winners meeting. We were talking about the fact that Anthopoulos was basically pounding the table, telling people all of these rumors that you were seeing about the Atlanta Braves being after this free agent and that free agent, and all the ones that are, basically like the Blake Snells, Marcus Stroman, Jordan Montgomery, all of them. What Anthopoulos was essentially trying to tell you was that's not happening. And the reason why it's not happening is because it would have them crashing through that third threshold. So that was why the big deal was made when they made the move to get Chris Sale. One of the big keys to that was $17 million from the Boston Red Sox coming back to Atlanta to help pay his salary. Now, I understand that they reworked it, but that money still came back that way. So a lot of folks, when they saw the deal, they're like, man, we only got Chris Sale back. He's 34. He's been injury prone. That's all we got back. We're giving him Vaughn Grissom. The reason why it was such a big deal was because of what I just stated. So don't think that the Braves really have much room to wiggle now. Now, what could still happen is if they were to move somebody to clear up space, and then that would wiggle. But when you look at it, and we're going to hit the roster here in a second. When you look at what the Braves have coming back on this team's loaded. MLB just put out it was a graphic, and I don't know who was all involved because they didn't mention it. But they said essentially that the 2024 through 2033, so the next 10 series World Series prediction by MLB.com, their World Series prediction going into this year, Braves over the Orioles, meaning the Braves are their favorite. The Braves are the favorite in Vegas. Next year, it's the Dodgers over the Blue Jays. And I think a lot of that's being thrown in there because they believe that when Shohei Ohtani comes back and is ready to pitch in 2025, the Dodgers are going to be just that much better. The laughable one, Mets over Yankees in 2026. What in the hell makes you think that I can almost buy the Mets rebounding, but the Yankees window is closing. If the Yankees are going to go out there and win a World Series in the foreseeable future, they better do it by next year or get to the World Series. I don't know if they've got what it takes to get all the way there this year. But by next year, they better be, because the Yankees are getting older. Their stars are getting older. The Braves, the Orioles, they're all young guys. I know this is just a goofy exercise. They probably just had the writers vote, and the writers came back, and they just compiled it. I'm sure that's how they did it. But it is interesting that they put in 2027 the Orioles over the Dodgers, because the Orioles have that young core. They have the Orioles in the World Series 3 times, winning it once between the next 6 seasons, between this year and 2029. They've got the Phillies beating the Tigers in 2030, and I don't know what in the world would make them think the Phillies would be better in 2030 than they would somewhere in the next few years. Bryce Harper is going to continue to get that money, and he is not getting younger. That whole team is one of the reasons why they're such a difficult team to beat is because it's a bunch of cagey veterans. That's the plus side. The downside is your window starts slamming shut. Cubs fans, Red Sox fans, they have Cubs, Red Sox in 2031. Cubs beating the Red Sox. After that, they've got the Yankees beating the Cubs in 2032. And here's the one that you're like, all right, they were just screwing with you. Rockies over the Angels in 2033. You could almost convince me that the Rockies will get it together. There is nothing that I have seen in 20 years that tells me the Angels are heading towards the World Series. That rally monkey is not coming back anytime soon. All right, if you look at the Braves, what would be essentially the Atlanta Braves roster for this year and how it would play out. By the way, those hard numbers, Max Fried was signed for $15 million for his last year of arbitration, and AJ Minter 6.22. So that locks them in, starts giving them an idea. And if the Braves are going to make any kind of decisive move, they will have to get all these arbitration numbers cleared up. And they usually get cleared up late January. So you're going to start seeing a lot of teams start making moves because there are going to be guys that are going to be open and available. And once they clear everything out, look, I knew you just have Stroman on the list. We still haven't heard what the hell Kershaw is doing. Is he retiring? I figured he's either retiring or going back to the Dodgers. Slight chance he could go to the Rangers, but I figured those are the only two. He made it sound like he wants to come back. But here's some other big names that are out there. Joey Votto. I heard a great idea. Someone talking about Joey Votto getting signed to a 1-year deal to go back home to Canada and play for the Blue Jays, who really need some offensive help. If you didn't follow them all year long, the last half of the season, the back half of the season, the Toronto Blue Jays offense fell apart. Jock Peterson is still out there. Cody Bellinger, who he's 28 years old. He's expected to get around a 5 or 6 year deal that'll be right around what Freddie Freeman made a couple of seasons ago. Justin Turner, he's 38, but he is still out there. I'm sorry, he just turned 39. Evan Longoria, he's 38. He's still out there. Josh Hader, that's the big one that I'm a little surprised someone hasn't grabbed yet. And he must be expecting a ridiculously long contract. Because his market value that's being projected is 17.5. Most teams would view that as doable. I mean, Kenley Jansen got 16 last year per year. What was it, a 2-year deal? But Hader's 29. He'll be 30 this coming season. Josh Hader is probably looking to cash in one last time. And for the fact that he's still out there, it's mind-boggling. Other guys that are still out there, if you missed the news, Julio Urias came back that he will not be facing felony charges. And he still has the assault on him, but that improves his chances of getting a deal this year. I think he's probably not going to get a deal this year. I think he's probably going to get blackballed a little bit, and he's going to have to do the old go to classes and some kind of therapy that will probably be put onto him by the system. It'll probably be court ordered, and then he would still be able to come back at age 28 next year. I'd be surprised if he comes back this year, it's going to be on a 1-year deal so he can reset his value. We still haven't heard anything about Trevor Bauer. It feels like he's getting the old-fashioned blackball. Matt Chapman is still out there. Jorge Soler is still out there. That's mind-boggling. They're putting his market value at just over 13.5. Jorge Soler is only 31 years old. Reese Hoskins is still out there. I think he's going to have to sign a 1-year preview deal. I really do. Then coming off that injury, no one's going to give him what he thinks that he's worth over a multi-year deal, so he'll get a 1-year deal. He may go back to Philly, but because they said that Bryce Harper is moving to first base permanently, that tells me Reese Hoskins is bye-bye. Michael Brantley announced his retirement. And once again, Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery still out there. It really is dumbfounding. I'll tell you a couple other guys out there that could probably be getting for a bargain. JD Martinez. Eddie Rosario is still out there. His market value is nothing. I'm sure he thinks he's worth much more. It is continued to fall. The market value now, as we see, is 5.8. It was 6.5 a few weeks ago. And I guess that's about it as far as free agents. Tommy Pham is still out there. I think he'd be a terrible fit in the Braves locker room, but he did have a good postseason. Just remember something. He's had a terrible couple of last regular seasons. So what are you getting on that? If you look at what the Braves lineup will probably be on opening day right now, Acuna, Ozzie, Riley Olsen, Ozuna. And then the big question comes, after the number 5, where do you go? And I think it's time to bring Michael Harris up into the lineup. I loved seeing him hit right in front of Acuna, but you're not moving Acuna down in the lineup. And I think you want to start seeing Harris get more at-bats. So the way I have it played out against righties is Harris, Darno, or Murphy, depending on who's starting that day. And then Jerry Kelenic in the 8th spot and RC in the 9th spot. And that way you break up the righty-lefty. You don't have so the one thing that the Braves remember, we brought in Luis Guillorme to a 1-year deal, but he's a bench piece, just like David Fletcher. The one thing that I do love now, Braves, if they get the floor from Fletcher and Guillorme, they have improved their bench. They still need that one outfielder that can hit from the right side. That would be ideal. Now, who could fill that role that the Braves could afford? That's the question. And the Braves, because of that, technically, right now, you could squeeze in Adam Duvall because he comes in at $5.5 million on the market value. We have about a $6 million gap in between where we are right now, where we're projected, and where we are and what the next threshold is. But that's cutting it really, really close. Let's see right here. As a Braves fan, I don't think the Braves will go far this season. This is from Miguel. Braves rotation is very weak. I couldn't disagree with you more, Miguel. The Braves rotation is going to be one of the best in baseball. Remember something else, too, that a lot of folks that I think might be overlooking, and rightfully so. You've got A.J. Smith-Shawver, who's going to be getting some innings this year. You know he is. That was the key thing that kept the Braves from picking up Dylan Cease. They wanted A.J. Smith-Shawver. And Alex Anthopoulos was not willing to do it. Because I have to kind of agree with Anthopoulos on this one. I know we see what the ceiling is with the Cease, but here's the deal. You trade A.J. Smith-Shawver, who is basically a younger version of what Dylan Cease is. You trade him, and he's got 6 years of control going forward for a guy who's going to be a free agent at the end of next year. And look, they already know that they're going to be in a bind in a couple of seasons because they're going to have other guys coming up for free agency. And the last thing I want to do is just Anthopoulos is here for the long haul, and he really sees the big picture on it. I do appreciate the comment though, Miguel. Thank you for chiming in. It's always great to hear people's opinions. But Sale is not going to be asked to go out there every fifth day. He's just not. They're going to give him extra rest whenever they can. Here's the other thing about Sale that a lot of people probably missed last year. When you see his ERA, you probably think, man, I don't know, is he any good? Chris Sale pitched in front of the worst defense in baseball. And his expected ERA was much, much lower. He also still has one of the biggest one of the highest swing and miss rates in all of baseball. And I don't think that's changing anytime soon. I really don't. I think you're going to continue to see that unfold. And as he gets through the season, they're going to skip him from time to time. So I think the Braves are set. Next time when we go over this, we are going to talk about the entire rotation. We're going to talk about the bullpen, what that's going to look like. We got to get out of here. Y'all have a great day. Please hit the like on your way out. And we'll see you next Thursday, 4 o'clock. Beginning in March, we'll be doing this Mondays and Thursdays. Oh, baby, baseball season is right around the damn corner. Y'all have a great weekend.